Depth of 0 meters, the surface membrane. The depth is 0 meters. You have just commenced your journey to the depths of the sea. Right now, you are simply scratching the surface of the water. This is the starting line. It is the thin skin where the air ends and the ocean begins. Before we go down, we must observe this place. It is a world of two halves. Above you is the sky. Below you is the deep. At 0 meters, the water feels light. It is warm from the sun. The light here is still perfect and clear. You can see every color of the rainbow. The reds are bright. The yellows are sharp. This is because the sun's rays haven't been filtered by the weight of the ocean yet. But this will change soon. Take a moment to look at the water around you. It isn't just a liquid. It acts like a solid floor for some and a ceiling for others. There are tiny insects and plants that live only here. They spend their entire lives on this thin film. They never go up into the air, and they never sink into the dark. They stay right here at the 0 point. The water here is about 800 times heavier than the air. You can feel that weight against your skin. It is a gentle pressure for now. It holds you up. It makes you feel weightless. In the air, you are heavy. In the water, you are part of the flow. You are starting to move at the same speed as the waves. The sound at 0 meters is very specific. Above the surface, you hear the wind. It sounds like a soft whistle or a long sigh. It carries the smell of salt. But when you put your ears just below the surface, that sound disappears. It is replaced by a low thrumming. It sounds like a distant engine or a steady heartbeat. This is the sound of the ocean moving. It is a deep, muffled noise that fills your head and calms your mind. The light does something strange here. When you look down, you see long lines of brightness. People call these God rays. They look like white ribbons of light reaching into the blue. They move and dance because the waves on the surface are acting like tiny magnifying glasses. They focus the sunlight into beams that point the way down. If you follow those beams with your eyes, you see them slowly fade. They turn from bright white to a soft, hazy teal. The surface is also a giant filter. Even at 0 meters, the ocean is starting to take the heat from the sun. It stores that heat, keeping the top layer of the sea comfortable. But this warmth is only a thin blanket. Beneath us, the water is waiting to get cold. For now, enjoy the warmth of the 0 point. It is the last time you will feel the direct heat of the sun on your body. At this depth, the ocean is breathing. It takes in gases from the air and sends others back up. It is a giant exchange. This is where most of the life in the sea happens. Tiny fish and floating plants stay near the surface because they need the light to survive. They follow the sun. As we go deeper, this life will become more rare. It will become stranger. Notice how the horizon looks from here. The line where the sea meets the sky is blurry. It looks like the world is infinite. But we aren't going across the water. We are going through it. We are leaving the world of the horizon behind. We are entering a world of vertical space. Your body is now adjusting to the water. Your heart rate is slowing down. Your breathing is becoming steady. The air you are breathing now is the last bit of the surface world you will take with you. As we slip further down, the sky will start to shrink. It will become a small, bright circle above your head. Eventually, it will just be a memory of a light. We have finished our check of the surface. We have documented the light, the warmth, and the sound of the 0 point. Everything is ready. The data is clear. We are leaving the membrane now. We are letting the weight of the water pull us down, inch by inch, away from the air. The sky is fading. The wind is gone. The journey has truly begun. Depth of 50 meters, the Kelp Cathedral. The depth is 50 meters. You are now well below the surface membrane. At this depth, the world has changed color. The bright reds and oranges from the surface have completely vanished. The ocean has filtered them out. Everything here is bathed in a soft emerald green and a deep, cooling teal. It is a quiet, shaded world. It feels less like the open sea and more like a forest at twilight. You are standing, or floating, in the middle of a kelp cathedral. These are giant stalks of seaweed that grow from the seafloor far below, reaching all the way up toward the light. At 50 meters, you are looking at the thickest part of this underwater woods. The stalks are like massive, flexible pillars. They aren't stiff like the trees on land. They are graceful. They move in long, slow arcs, swaying back and forth with the rhythm of the deep currents. The movement is hypnotic. Every stalk moves at the exact same time, leaning to the left, then slowly pulling back to the right. It is a silent dance that never stops. As you watch them, your own body starts to feel that same pull. You find yourself swaying with the kelp. The water here is thicker and more supportive than at the surface. It holds you in place as the forest moves around you. Look up toward the surface. You can still see the sun, but it is different now. The water above acts like a thick green glass. The light doesn't hit you directly anymore. Instead, it flickers through the long, golden-brown leaves of the kelp. These leaves are called fronds. They are translucent and thin. When the light passes through them, it glows. It creates a dappled effect on the water, much like sunlight hitting the floor of a real forest on a summer afternoon. At 50 meters, the pressure is much higher than at the surface. You can feel it as a steady, firm hug against your chest and ears. It isn't painful, it is grounding. It tells your brain that you are no longer in the world of air. You are now part of the weight of the sea. The bubbles you breathe out don't race to the top as fast as they did before. They take their time. They wobble and expand as they float up through the kelp leaves, ringing like tiny bells as they brush against the stalks. The sound here is muffled and heavy. The hiss of the wind from the surface is gone. Instead, you hear the creak and rustle of the kelp forest. As the giant plants rub against each other, they make a low, wooden sound. It is a very peaceful noise. It sounds like the house settling at night. It is the sound of a living space that is comfortable and old. There is life everywhere in the cathedral, but it moves slowly to save energy. Small fish dart between the stalks, using the kelp as a place to hide. They look like silver flashes in the green gloom. There are orange Garibaldi fish that glow like small lanterns against the dark leaves. Everything here has a purpose. The kelp provides the oxygen and the shelter, and the sea provides the constant, steady motion. The floor of this cathedral is still far below us, hidden in a darker shade of blue. But at 50 meters, you can feel the life of the ocean floor rising up to meet you. The water is full of nutrients, tiny bits of life that the kelp feeds on. It makes the water look a bit misty, like a soft fog in the woods. This mist catches the light and holds it, making the entire 50-meter mark feel like it is glowing from the inside. As you drift between the pillars of kelp, take notice of how peaceful the gravity feels. You aren't falling, you are drifting. You are part of the forest. The stalks of the kelp are hundreds of feet long, yet they are held up by tiny air bladders that act like golden balloons. They want to go up, but their roots hold them down. They are stretched out in a perfect, vertical line. Your mind is now settling into the depth. The data of the surface world, the clocks, the phones, the noise, has been left behind at the 0 point. Down here at 50 meters, Time is measured by the swaying of the leaves. One sway to the left, one sway to the right. Each movement takes several seconds. It is a slow, natural clock that tells you there is no rush. We have documented the Kelp Cathedral. We have recorded the green light, the swaying pillars, and the heavy silence of the forest. You are becoming a creature of the deep. The light is starting to dim as the afternoon sun moves across the sky far above. The emerald green is starting to turn into a darker, colder blue. Depth of 100 meters, the scintillating blue. The depth is 100 meters. You have reached a major milestone in your journey. At this coordinate, you are officially leaving the upper layers of the sea. Looking around, the kelp forest has vanished. The seafloor is now hundreds, perhaps thousands, of feet below your feet. You are suspended in a vast, open space known as the scintillating blue. There are no walls here. There are no trees or landmarks. There is only a deep, vibrating indigo that stretches out in every direction. At 100 meters, the transformation of light is almost complete. If you were to hold up a red object here, it would look black or a dull, dark gray. The water has absorbed the red, orange, and yellow light. Only the strongest blue and violet waves can reach this far down. The result is a color you rarely see on land, a blue so thick and pure it feels like it has a weight of its own. The water here is noticeably colder. The sun's warmth cannot penetrate this deep. You are entering the twilight transition. Even though it is midday at the surface, here it feels like the very end of a long evening. The light doesn't come from a single spot in the sky anymore. Instead, the water itself seems to glow with a faint, ghostly dimness. It is as if the ocean has swallowed the sun and is slowly digesting its light. The pressure at 100 meters is now 10 times stronger than it was at the surface. Every square inch of your body is being pressed upon by the weight of the water column above you. This pressure has a strange effect on sound. At the surface, sounds are sharp and scattered. Here, the water is so dense that sound travels with incredible speed and clarity. You might hear the low-frequency groan of a distant ship or the clicking of a whale miles away. These sounds don't feel like they are coming from over there. They feel like they are happening inside the water itself, vibrating through your very bones. Notice the scintillation in the water. Even though the light is fading, the ocean is filled with tiny, sparkling specks. This is often called marine snow. It is made of tiny bits of organic material drifting down from the surface world. As these specks catch the last bits of blue light, they twinkle like stars in a night sky. It gives you the sensation that you are floating in deep space, drifting past distant galaxies. There is a profound sense of solitude at 100 meters. The busy life of the surface, the birds, the splashing waves, the schools of bright fish, is gone. The creatures that live here are different. They are often translucent or silver, acting like mirrors to hide in the blue. You might see a school of tuna pass by, their bodies looking like chrome missiles. They move without effort, gliding through the heavy water as if it were air. Your internal rhythm is changing now. In the scintillating blue, there is nothing to look at to judge your speed. Without the kelp or the surface to guide you, you lose the sense of falling. You simply feel like you are existing in a vast, blue dream. Your heart rate settles into a slow, steady pulse. Your mind begins to let go of the need for direction. In the archive, this is known as the neutral point, the place where you stop looking back at the sky and start looking forward into the dark. The water is incredibly still here. The storms of the surface do not reach 100 meters. Even if a hurricane were raging above, you would feel nothing but a gentle, silent calm. It is one of the most stable environments on the planet. Nothing changes here. The temperature stays the same. The light stays the same. The blue stays the same. It is a place of perfect, eternal quiet. Take a deep breath and imagine the weight of the blue filling your vision. There is no more green. There is no more brown. There is only the spectrum of the deep. You are a pioneer in this space, documenting the slow loss of the sun. You are becoming a part of the blue. As we conclude our notes on the 100-meter mark, look down one last time. The indigo is beginning to sharpen. It is losing its sparkle and becoming a flat, heavy navy. The scintillating blue is fading into the twilight zone. The final photons of the sun are losing their battle with the depth. We are leaving the open blue and moving toward the layer where the shadows begin to take shape. The light is almost gone. Depth of 150 meters, the schooling mind. The depth is 150 meters. You are now entering the deepest part of the sunlight zone, a place where the sun's influence is a mere ghost of what it was at the surface. The water here is a dark, heavy sapphire. It feels thicker, cooler, and much more secretive. At this depth, you encounter one of the ocean's most incredible sights, the schooling mind. You are surrounded by a massive wall of silver, thousands upon thousands of small fish moving together as if they share a single brain. They don't move like individuals. They move like a liquid ribbon, twisting and turning in perfect harmony. As you float among them, you notice there are no leaders and no followers. There is only the collective. When one fish turns, the entire school ripples in response, a fraction of a second later. It looks like a giant, shimmering muscle flexing in the dark water. The silver scales of the fish catch the last, dying glimmers of blue light, creating a strobe-like effect that is both dizzying and deeply relaxing to watch. The sound here is a soft, rhythmic whoosh. It is the sound of millions of tiny fins cutting through the water at the same time. It isn't a sharp noise, but a low, brushing sound, like the wind moving through a field of tall grass. Being inside the school feels like being inside a heartbeat. You are wrapped in a protective layer of life, shielded from the vast emptiness of the open sea. The pressure at 150 meters is now a constant, firm presence. It pushes against you from every side, reminding you how far you have traveled from the air. Your movements have become very slow. In this high-pressure world, quick actions are a waste of energy. You learn to drift, to hover, and to watch. You are observing a level of coordination that humans rarely experience, a total loss of the self into the group. Looking up, the surface is no longer a bright ceiling. It is a dim, flickering memory. The light is so faint now that your eyes have to work harder to pick out shapes. This is why the fish school so tightly. In the dimness, their shimmering bodies confuse predators, making it impossible to pick out a single target. They become a silver cloud, a single massive organism designed to survive the shadows. The water at 150 meters is incredibly pure. Because it is so far from the crashing waves and the coastal runoff, it is crystal clear, yet dark. It feels like moving through a giant, cold jewel. The temperature has dropped again, and the silence has deepened. The schooling fish eventually move on, spiraling away into the gloom like a fading galaxy of silver stars. You are left alone again in the deep sapphire. The silence returns, heavier than before. You can feel the great weight of the water above you, 150 meters of liquid pressing down, grounding you in this quiet space. Your mind feels as steady and calm as the water. There is no wind here. There are no seasons. There is only the long, slow pulse of the deep. The final traces of the schooling silver disappear into the dark. The sapphire water begins to turn into a bruised purple, then a charcoal gray. You are standing on the very edge of the twilight zone. One more step, one more foot of depth, and the world of the sun will be behind you forever. We are leaving the world of light behind. The journey continues into the dimming shadows, moving now toward the 200-meter mark. Depth of 200 meters, the boundary line. The depth is 200 meters. You have reached the official end of the sunlight zone. Behind you is the world of color and warmth. Ahead of you is the vast, eternal evening of the Mesopelagic. In the science of the sea, this is the most significant threshold on the planet. It is the boundary line. At 200 meters, the sun has lost its power. If you were to look up, you would see a sky that looks like the deepest part of a midnight forest. The light is no longer a beam. It is a faint, glowing haze that provides no warmth and no direction. This is the twilight zone, a place where the day never truly begins and the night never truly ends. The water here feels different. It is significantly colder now, hitting a layer called the thermocline where the temperature dropped sharply. The density of the water has increased, and the pressure is now 20 times greater than it was at the surface. You can feel this weight as a total stillness. There are no currents here to push you around. The water is heavy, stagnant, and silent. It feels like being encased in a cold, blue velvet. This depth marks a change in the rules of life. Above this line, plants can grow by harvesting sunlight. Below this line, photosynthesis is impossible. There are no weeds, no kelp, and no floating algae. Every creature that lives below this boundary must find a different way to survive. They must either wait for food to fall from the world above or become hunters in the dark. As you hover at the 200-meter mark, you might notice a strange, shimmering effect in the water. This is the deep scattering layer. To a sonar operator on a ship, this layer looks like a solid seafloor, but it is actually a massive ceiling of living organisms. Millions of small fish, squid, and jellyfish huddle here during the day, hiding in the shadows of the boundary line to avoid being seen by predators. They are waiting for the sun to set so they can begin their long climb back to the surface. The silence at the boundary line is absolute. At the surface, the ocean is a noisy place, but those high-frequency sounds cannot penetrate this far down. The 200-meter mark acts like a soundproof wall. The only thing you can hear is the occasional low-frequency rumble of the Earth itself or the haunting, distant calls of deep-sea whales that use this layer as a highway. It is a lonely, peaceful sound that reminds you of how vast the archive really is. Your eyes begin to adapt to the permanent gloom. You start to notice that some of the creatures here carry their own light. Small, glowing specks drift past, jellies that pulse with a soft, bioluminescent rhythm. They don't use light to see, they use it to communicate, to distract, or to blend in. At the boundary line, light is no longer a gift from the sun. It is a tool created by the living. Floating at 200 meters, you realize that the world you knew is now a distant memory. The surface is a ghost. The sky is a legend. You are now a citizen of the deep. Your body feels completely integrated into the pressure and the cold. There is no desire to return to the frantic energy of the waves. There is only the desire to see what lies further down, in the places where the light has never touched. The blue has lost its vibrancy. It is becoming a dark, dusty charcoal. The boundary line is behind you now. You are slipping into the true twilight, where the shadows have no edges and the time has no meaning. The descent continues into the dimming gray, moving now toward the 300-meter mark. Depth of 300 meters, the deep scattering layer. The depth is 300 meters. You are now descending through one of the most mysterious structures in the natural world. In the early days of sonar, sailors thought they had found a false bottom, a solid floor that seemed to move. They eventually realized that this floor was alive. You are currently drifting through the deep scattering layer. At this depth, the water is crowded, yet silent. You are surrounded by millions of tiny organisms, lanternfish, translucent shrimp, and small squid. During the daylight hours, this massive cloud of life stays here, huddled in the dim safety of the 300-meter mark. They are hiding from the sun. To them, the light is a danger that reveals their silhouettes to predators. Here, in the thick twilight, they are invisible. The atmosphere at 300 meters is heavy and thick. The water feels packed with energy, even though nothing is moving quickly. You are inside a biological waiting room. Every creature around you is perfectly still, conserving every bit of energy for the coming night. When the sun finally sets far above, this entire layer will begin a massive vertical migration, swimming hundreds of meters upward to feed under the cover of darkness. But for now, in the archive of the day, they are frozen in time. The light at this depth is almost entirely gone. It is a world of silhouettes. If you look up, you can see the faint, ghostly shapes of larger hunters, sharks, or billfish cruising far above. They look like dark shadows against a very dim, violet sky. Down here, you learn to watch for movement rather than color. The water has a grainy, textured quality to it, like an old photograph. The pressure is now a crushing weight, but it feels supportive, like a heavy blanket that keeps everything in its place. Because the water is so dense, the vibrations of life are easier to feel. You can sense the collective buzz of millions of tiny hearts and moving fins. It isn't a sound you hear with your ears, but a tremor you feel in your chest. It is the vibration of the largest migration on Earth, waiting to happen. The bioluminescence is becoming more common here. Lanternfish have rows of light-emitting organs along their bellies. At 300 meters, they use these lights for counter-illumination. They glow just bright enough to match the faint light coming from above, erasing their own shadows so that anything looking up from the dark cannot see them. It is a world of optical illusions and invisible masterpieces. Floating in this layer, you feel like a guest in a giant, sleeping city. There is a sense of immense scale. The scattering layer is miles wide and wraps around the entire planet like a living shroud. It is a reminder that the majority of life on Earth does not live in the light. It lives here, in the cold, pressurized quiet of the 300-meter mark. Your mind settles into this rhythm of waiting. The stillness of the creatures around you is contagious. Your thoughts become slow and rhythmic. You find yourself watching a single, translucent shrimp as it hangs motionless in the water, its long antennae twitching at the slightest vibration. In this place, patience is the only way to survive. The false bottom is starting to thin out as we move deeper. The crowd of life is staying behind, clinging to the last traces of the twilight. The water ahead is becoming emptier, colder, and much more profound. The living cloud is fading into the distance. The journey moves back into the open, lonely dark. Moving now toward the 400-meter mark. Depth of 400 meters, the Big Eye Hunters. The depth is 400 meters. We are now drifting into a layer of the ocean where the eyes of the living become the most important tools for survival. At this depth, the sun is no longer a source of energy. It is a faint, dying ember. To see anything at all, the creatures here have evolved into the Big Eye Hunters. At 400 meters, you are surrounded by predators that have adapted to the permanent gloom. Unlike the creatures at the surface, the fish here have eyes that are disproportionately large, sometimes taking up half of their heads. These eyes are shaped like tubes or globes, designed to capture every single remaining photon of light drifting down from the world above. They do not look forward. They look upward, searching for the tiny, dark silhouettes of prey passing overhead. The water at this depth has a heavy, metallic quality. The blue has been replaced by a deep, bruised indigo that feels almost black. The temperature continues to fall, and the silence is so thick it feels like a physical presence. Because there is so little light, the world feels smaller. You can only see what is directly in front of you or what is highlighted by a sudden flash of living light. The hunters here are patient. They do not chase their prey through the water. Instead, they hover, perfectly still, suspended in the dark. They are built for the shadows. Many of them have dark, bronze-colored scales that do not reflect light, or bodies that are as black as coal. They are ghosts in a world of ghosts. When a hunter moves, it is a single, lightning-fast strike, followed by a return to the total stillness of the deep. The pressure at 400 meters is now 40 times greater than the world of air. You can feel the density of the sea in every movement. It feels as though the water is trying to hold you in place, discouraging any unnecessary action. In this high-pressure environment, life moves in slow motion. The big eye hunters have slow metabolisms. They may wait days or even weeks for a single meal to pass through their field of vision. As you drift through this layer, you might notice the strange shapes of the hatchetfish. Their bodies are thin like blades, and their silver sides act like mirrors to reflect the surrounding dark. But it is their eyes that draw your attention, tubular, yellow, and fixed permanently toward the surface. They are searching for the deep scattering layer we just passed, waiting for a stray organism to wander too far down. The solitude here is different than at the 100-meter mark. At 100 meters, the ocean felt empty. At 400 meters, it feels watched. You are aware that you are moving through a landscape of invisible eyes, all tuned to the faint, flickering signals of the twilight. It is a place of extreme focus. There are no distractions here. No wind, no waves, no seasons, only the endless, patient hunt. Your mind begins to mirror this focus. The clutter of the surface world feels impossible to reach from here. Your thoughts become as still as the hunters around you. You are learning the value of the quiet. You are learning that in the deep, survival belongs to those who can stay the most still. The faint indigo light is finally beginning to fail. The outlines of the big eye hunters are slipping into the total blackness of the layers below. The world of the eye is transitioning into the world of the sensor and the lure. The shadows are becoming absolute. The journey moves into the realm of the long, thin giants. Moving now toward the 500-meter mark. Depth of 500 meters, the Scintillating chain. The depth is 500 meters. You have reached the halfway point of the twilight zone. At this coordinate, the last traces of the sun are so weak that they can no longer be measured by human eyes. In this darkness, you encounter one of the strangest structures in the archive, the Scintillating chain. At 500 meters, you aren't looking at a single animal, but a ghostly, fragile colony that can grow hundreds of feet long. A Scintillating looks like a glowing, translucent rope or a delicate lace ribbon drifting through the dark. It is made of thousands of individual creatures, all linked together, each performing a specific task. Some handle the swimming, some handle the eating, and others handle the glowing. Together, they act as one single, massive organism. The chain moves through the water like a slow, living spiral. It is incredibly fragile, thinner than a strand of hair in some places. In the world of the surface, waves and currents would tear it apart instantly. But here, at 500 meters, the water is so still and the pressure is so steady that these delicate giants can thrive. They hang in the water like a spider's web, waiting for anything to brush against their stinging cells. The sound at this depth has shifted from a thrum to a complete, hollow silence. There is no movement from the surface. The water is cold and motionless. As the Scintillating pulses its swimming bells, it creates a rhythm that you can feel more than hear, a soft, repetitive beat that echoes the silence of the deep. It is a slow, hypnotic pulse that pulls you deeper into a state of rest. The light at 500 meters is entirely biological. The siphonophore glows with a soft, flickering light, often a pale blue or a ghostly green. As the chain spirals through the dark, it looks like a neon wire or a string of stars falling through the night. This light isn't meant to illuminate the way. It is a lure. In the pitch-black water, small creatures are drawn to the glow, only to find themselves caught in the invisible threads of the colony. The pressure is now 50 times the weight of the atmosphere. It is a comforting, heavy blanket. At 500 meters, your body feels as though it has no edges. You are part of the liquid. You are as weightless as the siphonophore itself. There is a profound sense of peace in being so far from the solid world. Down here, there is no up or down, there is only the drift. As you watch the chain disappear into the gloom, you realize how long these creatures are. Some siphonophores have been measured at over 150 feet, making them longer than a blue whale. Yet, they are so light and thin that they seem to be made of the water itself. They are the architects of the shadows, building long, glowing bridges through the empty space of the deep. Your thoughts have become long and winding, much like the colony you are observing. The frantic pace of the surface world has been replaced by a slow-motion reality. You are learning to exist in the long now, a state where minutes and hours don't matter. There is only the steady rhythm of the pulse and the slow drift through the indigo. The glowing ribbon is fading now, shrinking into a tiny point of light as we continue to sink. The water is becoming even heavier, and the temperature continues its slow, steady crawl toward freezing. The living light is slipping away. The journey moves toward the layer where the ocean begins to run out of breath. Moving now toward the 700-meter mark. Depth of 700 meters, the oxygen minimum. The depth is 700 meters. As you continue your descent, you enter a layer of the ocean that feels uniquely still and heavy. This is the oxygen minimum zone. In this part of the archive, the water contains the lowest levels of dissolved oxygen in the entire sea. It is a place where life is forced to slow down to its absolute limit. At 700 meters, the water is a cold, flat charcoal. Because there is so little oxygen here, the creatures that live at this depth have developed a masterclass in efficiency. They do not swim quickly. They do not hunt with aggression. Instead, they hover. You are surrounded by animals with soft, jello-like bodies and blood that is specially designed to grab every tiny molecule of oxygen passing by. They move like they are in a deep sleep, breathing so slowly that they barely seem alive. The atmosphere at this depth is one of profound, heavy rest. At the surface, life is fast and competitive, fueled by the rich air and the bright sun. But here, the scarcity of oxygen has created a culture of peace. Nothing is wasted. Every heartbeat is calculated. Every flick of a fin is deliberate. It is the quietest room in the global ocean, a place where the very act of breathing is a slow, rhythmic meditation. The pressure is now 70 times what you experienced at the 0 point. It is a massive, invisible weight that keeps the water perfectly still. There is no mixing here. The water is old, having traveled for decades or even centuries to reach this coordinate. As you drift through it, you are touching water that hasn't seen the sky since long before you were born. It is a liquid history, cold and silent. The silence at 700 meters is different from the layers above. It isn't just a lack of noise, it is a lack of energy. The water feels thin in a biological sense, but thick in a physical one. There is no buzzing of schools or snapping of predators. There is only the low, muffled hum of the planet's crust and the sound of your own steady, slow breathing. You are mirroring the environment around you. your heart rate dropping to match the low energy life of the oxygen minimum. The light at this depth is non-existent. The sun is now a distant myth, hundreds of meters above a ceiling of impenetrable dark. Any light you see here is a rare, bioluminescent spark, perhaps a small crustacean or a deep-sea jellyfish pulsing with a dim, red or blue glow. These lights look like embers in a dying fire, flickering briefly before fading back into the charcoal void. Floating at 700 meters, you feel a sense of total detachment. You are in a zone where the rules of the surface world are completely reversed. Efficiency is more important than speed. Stillness is more important than action. In the archive, this is the layer of deep rest. It is a place where you can let go of the need to do anything at all. You are simply a witness to the slow, quiet breathing of the deep sea. The water feels like a cool silk against your skin. Your thoughts are no longer racing. They have slowed to a crawl, matching the pace of the translucent creatures drifting beside you. You are becoming a part of the stillness. You are learning the secret of the minimum zone, that there is a deep, quiet power in doing as little as possible. The charcoal water is beginning to feel even colder. The oxygen levels will soon begin to rise again as we sink toward the bottom, but the darkness will only get deeper. The world of the slow breath is behind us. The journey moves toward the final flickers of the twilight, moving now toward the 900-meter mark. Depth of 900 meters, the first bioluminescence. The depth is 900 meters. You are standing on the very edge of the abyss. This is the deepest part of the twilight zone, a thin, dark curtain that separates the world of the sun from the world of eternal night. At this depth, the sun has no more power. The water is a flat, impenetrable obsidian. But as the sunlight fails, a new kind of light takes over. This is the realm of the first true bioluminescence. As your eyes adjust to the total dark, you begin to see tiny, cold sparks of light appearing in the water around you. They look like fireflies in a midnight field, or the first few stars appearing in a clear sky. These are not reflections. This is living light, created by the chemistry of life itself. At 900 meters, nearly 90% of the creatures around you carry their own lanterns. You see soft, pulsing blues, electric greens, and rare, dim reds. Some creatures use these lights to find a mate in the vast emptiness. Others use them to startle a predator with a sudden, brilliant flash of light. It is a silent language of sparks and glows, a conversation written in light against a background of infinite black. The water here is incredibly still and very cold. The pressure is now 90 times greater than at the surface. You can feel the density of the sea as a solid, comforting weight. It is so quiet that you can almost hear the sparks of light as they appear and disappear. Every flash tells a story of a creature surviving in the most extreme environment on Earth. Notice the jellyfish that pulse like neon signs, trailing long, glowing tentacles that look like fiber optic cables. Look at the small fish with rows of glowing portholes along their sides, looking like tiny, sunken ships drifting through the void. This isn't a world of shadows anymore. It is a world of points of light. The darkness is so total that a single spark can be seen from hundreds of feet away. Floating at 900 meters, you realize that the ocean has its own stars. You are no longer looking up for light, you are looking around you. The first bioluminescence is a reminder that even in the deepest dark, life finds a way to shine. It is a peaceful, hypnotic display of light that requires no sun and no fire. It is the cold, beautiful glow of the deep. Your mind is now fully immersed in the dark. The memory of the surface world, the bright sky, the green trees, the warm sun, feels like a dream from a different life. Here, at the 900-meter mark, you have found a new kind of beauty. It is a beauty that doesn't need to be seen to exist. It simply glows in the quiet. The sparks are becoming more frequent as we prepare to leave the twilight zone behind. We are about to enter the midnight zone, where the darkness is permanent and absolute. The transition is almost complete. The last ghost of the sun is gone. The world of living light is all that remains. Moving now toward the 1,000-meter mark. Depth of 1,000 meters, the threshold of midnight. The depth is 1,000 meters. You have reached the threshold. This is the official beginning of the Epipelagic zone, the midnight zone. From this point forward, the sun will never reach you again. Even at noon on the brightest day of the year, it is as dark here as the deepest cavern. At 1,000 meters, you are entering a world of permanent night. The water has lost all traces of color and has become a solid, uniform obsidian. The temperature has leveled out, hovering just above freezing. The pressure is now 100 times greater than at the surface. It is a weight that would crush most objects from the world above, but here, it feels like a steady, unchanging embrace. It is a world of absolute stability. The silence at the threshold of midnight is total. You are over half a mile beneath the waves. The storms, the wind, and the sound of the world's coastlines are completely absent. This is the quietest place on the planet. Any sound that does occur, the groan of the tectonic plates or the low-frequency rumble of a distant seismic event, travels with incredible clarity through the dense water. It feels as though the ocean is a giant, liquid ear, listening to the secrets of the earth. The creatures here are different from anything you have seen before. Because there is no light, eyes are no longer the primary tool for navigation. Many animals here are blind, relying instead on incredibly sensitive lateral lines that detect the tiniest vibrations in the water. They can feel you moving from dozens of feet away. They can feel the pulse of your heart and the displacement of the water as you drift. In the midnight zone, life moves at a pace that is almost geological. Food is scarce, so animals have evolved to conserve every possible joule of energy. They do not swim, they hover. They do not chase, they wait. You might see a black swallower or a fangtooth fish, creatures that look like nightmares but are actually delicate, small, and incredibly slow. They are the masters of the long wait. The bioluminescence here has changed. At 900 meters, it was used to blend in. Here, in the total black, it is used for navigation and attraction. You see sudden explosions of blue light as a shrimp releases a cloud of glowing chemicals to distract a predator. You see long, pulsing lines of light as jellyfish signal to one another across the void. In the midnight zone, light is a precious resource, used only when necessary. Floating at 1,000 meters, you experience a sense of profound isolation. You are separated from the rest of the world by a massive pillar of water. There is a strange comfort in this. All the worries of the surface, the passage of time, the noise of society, the light of the day, cannot reach you here. You are in a place where nothing ever changes. The midnight zone is the same today as it was 1,000 years ago, and it will be the same 1,000 years from now. Your breathing has become so slow that it feels like a part of the water. Your thoughts are calm and dark, matching the obsidian world around you. You are no longer a visitor, you are a resident of the deep. You have crossed the threshold, and the ocean has accepted you into its most private archive. The obsidian water is all-encompassing. The threshold is behind you. We are moving deeper into the midnight, where the pressure will grow and the mysteries will become even more ancient. The sun is a distant memory. The world of eternal night has begun. Moving now toward the 1,200-meter mark. Depth of 1,200 meters, the marine snow. The depth is 1,200 meters. As you sink further into the midnight zone, the emptiness of the deep sea begins to fill with a strange, silent weather. You are drifting through a constant, slow-motion blizzard. This is known as marine snow. At 1,200 meters, the water is filled with white flakes that drift down from the productive world far above. This snow is made of organic material, fragments of tiny plants, shells, and biological remnants that have spent weeks or months sinking through the water column. In the darkness, these flakes catch whatever bioluminescent light is nearby, glowing like falling stars. It is the lifeblood of the deep, the primary way that energy from the sun travels down to the creatures that never see the sky. The atmosphere at this depth is incredibly peaceful. The marine snow doesn't fall like rain on land. It drifts. Because the water is so dense and the currents are so still, a single flake can take hours just to drop a few meters. As you hover in the middle of this blizzard, it feels like the world is moving in slow motion. You are surrounded by millions of these white specks, all falling in a silent, synchronized rhythm that never ends. The pressure at 1,200 meters is now a heavy, solid force. You are submerged under more than 1,200 tons of weight for every square meter of your body. Yet, in this high-pressure environment, the marine snow remains delicate and soft. It is a reminder that even in the most extreme conditions, there is a place for the fragile. The snow piles up on any horizontal surface, the backs of sleeping fish, the ledges of underwater cliffs, and eventually, the seafloor itself. The sound at this depth is muffled and soft. The density of the water absorbs any sharp noises, leaving only a low-frequency hum. As the snow drifts past your ears, you can almost imagine the sound of a soft winter day on land, a quiet, padded stillness where every sound is tucked away. It is a soundscape designed for rest. There is no urgency here. The snow has been falling for millions of years, and it will continue to fall as long as there is life in the sea. Creatures at this depth have learned to be snow eaters. You might see small, translucent crustaceans or deep-sea worms with long, fan-like appendages, reaching out to catch the flakes as they drift by. They don't have to hunt, they simply wait for the sea to provide. They are the gardeners of the dark, cleaning the water and turning the waste of the surface into the life of the deep. Floating at 1,200 meters, you feel a deep connection to the layers above you. Every flake of snow is a message from the sunlight zone. It is a physical link between the world of breath and the world of the abyss. You realize that the ocean is one single, massive system, recycling itself in a slow, beautiful circle. Even here, in the total dark, you are being fed by the energy of the sun. Your mind is as calm as the falling snow. Your thoughts drift and settle, one by one, like the white flakes around you. There is a sense of completion here. You are watching the end of a long journey for these particles, as they finally reach the quiet layers of the deep. You feel no need to move or to act. You are simply a part of the weather. The snow continues to fall, thick and steady. The water is becoming even colder, and the silence is growing deeper as we leave the blizzard behind and move toward the realm of the giant mouths. The white flakes are fading into the black. The journey moves toward the hunters of the midnight void. Moving now toward the 1,500-meter mark. Depth of 1,500 meters, the angler's lure. The depth is 1,500 meters. You are now nearly a mile beneath the surface. At this coordinate, the water is a heavy, frozen black. The pressure is immense, pushing against the very structure of atoms. In this absolute void, a new kind of light appears, not the scattered sparks of the layers above, but a single, steady, and purposeful glow. This is the realm of the angler. As you drift through the darkness, you see a small, blue-white orb pulsing gently in the distance. It looks like a lone star in a sky with no moon. It doesn't move with the currents. It hangs perfectly still, suspended in the water. This is the lure of the deep-sea anglerfish. It is a biological light, created by glowing bacteria that live inside a small bulb at the end of a long, flexible spine. At 1,500 meters, this light is the most beautiful and dangerous thing in the sea. To a hungry creature in the dark, the glow represents hope, the possibility of food or a mate. But as you get closer, the light reveals the silhouette of the hunter behind it. The anglerfish is a master of the midnight zone. It is a creature of sharp teeth and soft, expandable skin, designed to swallow prey much larger than itself. It does not waste energy swimming. It simply anchors itself in the cold dark and lets the light do the work. The atmosphere here is one of extreme patience. The angler may wait for weeks in this exact spot without moving a single muscle. Time at 1,500 meters doesn't feel like minutes or hours. It feels like a single, continuous moment. The silence is so deep that the light itself seems to have a sound, a low, rhythmic hum that vibrates through the heavy water. It is a hypnotic, steady presence that pulls you into a trance. The water at this depth is almost at the freezing point. The high pressure keeps it from turning to ice, but it holds a chill that is ancient and unyielding. You can feel the density of the sea pressing in on you, a weight that feels like a solid wall. In this environment, every movement is a feat of engineering. The creatures here have bones as thin as paper and flesh like jelly, allowing the pressure to pass through them rather than crushing them. Floating near the lure, you realize the power of a single spark in the dark. In the world above, light is everywhere and means very little. Here, light is everything. It is the only map, the only language, and the only source of warmth for the imagination. You find yourself staring at the blue orb, your mind focusing entirely on its steady, rhythmic pulse. The rest of the world has ceased to exist. There is a strange comfort in the angler's world. It is a place of total honesty. There are no distractions, no colors, and no noise. There is only the dark and the light. Your thoughts become just as focused. You aren't thinking about the past or the future. You are simply present, hovering in the cold indigo, watching the light dance in the void. The lure begins to fade as we drift past, its blue glow shrinking until it is nothing more than a needlepoint of light in the distance. The blackness of the 1,500-meter mark closes in behind us, returning the water to its natural, empty state. The hunter remains in the shadows, waiting. The journey moves toward the realm of the strange and the wide, moving now toward the 2,000-meter mark. Depth of 2,000 meters, the gulper eel. The depth is 2,000 meters. You are now more than 1.25 miles below the surface. The water at this level is a thick, unmoving obsidian. The pressure has become so great that it would instantly flatten any air-filled object from the world above. Here, the weight of the ocean is no longer a sensation. It is the very definition of existence. In this deep, lonely stretch of the midnight zone, you encounter one of the most unusual shapes in the sea, the gulper eel. It drifts through the dark like a long, black thread. Its body is thin and whip-like, almost invisible against the background of the water. But as it moves, you notice its most striking feature, a massive, hinged jaw that looks far too large for its fragile body. At 2,000 meters, life is a game of opportunity. Food is so rare that a creature cannot afford to be picky. The gulper eel has evolved to be a living trap. Its mouth can stretch open to swallow animals much larger than itself, allowing it to feast on whatever the deep sea happens to provide, even if those meals only come once every few months. It is a masterpiece of biological economy, a tiny body attached to a giant doorway. The atmosphere at this depth is one of total, suspended animation. There is no current here to push the eel along. It hangs in the water, perfectly horizontal, its long tail ending in a tiny, glowing tip. This small red light at the end of its body acts like a beacon in the void, perhaps luring in curious prey or signaling to others of its kind across the vast, empty miles. The sound at 2,000 meters is a hollow, expansive silence. It is the sound of a world with no boundaries. Because the seafloor is still thousands of meters below and the surface is thousands of meters above, you are floating in a true abyss. There is no up, no down, and no sideways. There is only the dark. The density of the water is so high that even the smallest movement of the eel's tail creates a low-frequency ripple that travels for immense distances. The temperature has dropped to its lowest point, hovering just above the freezing mark. The water is heavy and biting, yet it feels strangely soft against you, like cold silk. In this environment, your own sense of time begins to dissolve. Without the sun or the cycles of the day, there is no way to measure the passing of an hour. There is only the steady, rhythmic pulsing of the eel's tail light and the slow expansion of its massive jaw. Floating at the 2,000-meter mark, you feel a sense of profound stillness. You are watching a creature that has not changed in millions of years. The gulper eel doesn't need to evolve. It has already perfected the art of waiting in the dark. It is a silent sentinel of the deep, a reminder that in the face of extreme pressure and total darkness, life does not just survive, it adapts into strange and beautiful new forms. Your thoughts have become as thin and long as the eel itself. You are no longer thinking in words, but in sensations, the cold, the weight, and the faint, red glow in the distance. You are drifting in the heart of the archive, a place where the noise of the human world is not even a memory. It is just you, the water, and the wide, open mouth of the deep. The eel flickers its light one last time before vanishing into the velvet black. The water ahead is opening up into an even wider plain, where the giants of the midwater begin to disappear and the masters of the deep currents take over. The long thread of the eel is gone. The journey moves toward the ancient, drifting spirits of the abyss, moving now toward the 2,500-meter mark. Depth of 2,500 meters, the vampire squid. The depth is 2,500 meters. You are now descending into the deepest reaches of the midnight zone. The water here is a dark, heavy plum color, so deep it is almost indistinguishable from black. At this coordinate, you meet a creature whose name sounds like a legend, but whose life is incredibly quiet, the vampire squid. Despite its name, the vampire squid is not a predator that hunts. It is a scavenger of the deep, a living relic from a time before the dinosaurs. It has survived for millions of years by being a master of the low-energy life. Its body is a soft, reddish-brown, and its 8 arms are connected by a web of skin that looks like a dark, velvet cloak. When it feels threatened, it doesn't ink. It simply turns itself inside out, wrapping its cloak around its body to show a row of soft, harmless spines. At 2,500 meters, the vampire squid lives in a world where oxygen is nearly gone. To survive, it has developed the lowest metabolic rate of any deep-sea cephalopod. It does not swim with effort. It drifts. It uses 2 small fins on its head that look like ears to fly through the water in slow, graceful circles. It is a creature of the shadows, moving with the elegance of a ghost in a cathedral. The atmosphere at this depth is one of absolute, velvety calm. The pressure is now 250 times what it was at the surface membrane. You can feel this weight as a total stillness in your limbs. The water is so dense that it supports the squid's fragile body perfectly. There are no sudden movements here. Everything is a slow, rhythmic flow. The squid deploys 2 long, thin filaments, like fishing lines, that can extend several times the length of its body. It uses these to catch bits of marine snow drifting down from above. The light at 2,500 meters is rare and spectacular. The vampire squid is covered in complex light organs called photophores. It can turn them on and off at will, making itself vanish into the dark or appearing as a sudden, brilliant flash to confuse an intruder. Most remarkably, it can shrink its lights, making it look like it is swimming away when it is actually staying perfectly still. It is a master of the optical illusion, a magician in a world of total night. The sound at this depth is a heavy, pressurized silence. You are far removed from the mechanical noise of the upper ocean. The only thing that exists is the sound of the deep currents, slow, massive rivers of water that move across the planet's floor. They carry with them the faint, low-frequency vibrations of the Earth's crust. It is a deep, grounding hum that makes you feel as though you are resting against the heart of the world itself. Floating at 2,500 meters, you feel a sense of ancient peace. The vampire squid has seen eras come and go, yet it remains here, unchanged, in the cold and the dark. It reminds you that you don't need to be fast or aggressive to survive. You only need to be in harmony with your environment. You find yourself matching the squid's slow, flying motion, your mind drifting as effortlessly as the velvet cloak in the water. The world of the sun is now over 1.5 miles above you. It is a place that no longer feels real. Here, in the plum-colored dark, reality is defined by the soft glow of a photophore and the slow reach of a filament. You are a silent observer in the most stable place on Earth. The squid pulls its cloak tight and fades into the obsidian. The water ahead is growing colder as we approach the 3,000-meter mark, where the open water finally begins to meet the plains of the deep. The velvet ghost has vanished. The journey moves toward the final descent of the midnight zone. Moving now toward the 3,000-meter mark. Depth of 3,000 meters, the echo of the surface. The depth is 3,000 meters. You are now far beyond the reach of the twilight, drifting in the upper reaches of the midnight zone. At this coordinate, the water has become a vast, acoustic chamber. This is the layer of the echo of the surface. At 3,000 meters, you are in a strange position. You are miles away from the sky, yet the ocean is so dense and still that it acts like a giant speaker. The sounds of the world above, the ones you thought you left behind, reach you here as faint, haunting vibrations. These are not clear sounds, they are ghosts of sounds. They have been stretched and slowed by the weight of the water. The atmosphere at this depth is one of deep listening. You might feel a low-frequency pulse vibrating through your chest. This is the song of a blue whale, singing perhaps hundreds of miles away. At 3,000 meters, the water carries these low notes with incredible efficiency. The song sounds like a slow, rhythmic groan, a deep bass note that fills the empty space around you. It is a reminder that even in the dark, you are still connected to the living world far above. The pressure is now 300 times greater than at the surface. This pressure changes the way sound behaves. High-pitched noises like the splashing of waves or the cries of gulls cannot reach this deep. They are absorbed by the water long before they get here. Only the deepest, most powerful sounds survive the descent. You can feel the rhythmic thrum of a massive ship's propeller, a sound that feels like a distant heartbeat. To the archive, this is the pulse of human civilization, reduced to a tiny, vibrating thread. The water here is a uniform, cold obsidian. There are no landmarks and very few creatures. Because food is so scarce, the animals that do live here are often solitary and silent. You might see a single, red-colored shrimp or translucent jellyfish, but for the most part, it is just you and the echoes. The silence is so heavy that your mind begins to focus on these distant vibrations, trying to map the world above through the movements in the water. Floating at 3,000 meters, you realize that the ocean has a memory. Every storm on the surface, every whale song, and every moving ship leaves a signature in this layer. You are drifting through a library of vibrations. It is a peaceful, meditative space. You aren't distracted by the sight of the world. You are only feeling its rhythm. Your own breathing becomes slow and deep, syncing with the low-frequency pulses of the sea. The temperature is a steady, chilling 2 degrees Celsius. The water is heavy and dark, but it doesn't feel empty. It feels full of information, data written in sound waves and pressure. You are a silent observer at the bottom of a vast, liquid ear, documenting the final, fading echoes of the sunlit world. The echoes are growing fainter as the water becomes even denser. The last vibrations of the surface are losing their strength, giving way to the silence of the deep earth. The whale song is fading into the dark. The journey moves toward the vast, flat silence of the plain, moving now toward the 4,000-meter mark. Depth of 4,000 meters, the abyssal plain. The depth is 4,000 meters. You have reached the edge of the world's largest landscape. Beneath you, the vertical drop finally gives way to a vast, horizontal expanse. This is the abyssal plain, a desert of gray and tan ooze that covers nearly 50% of the Earth's surface. At 4,000 meters, you are drifting over terrain that is more alien than the surface of the moon. It is a world of total, unyielding flatlands. The sediment here is a fine, silken ooze composed of the skeletal remains of trillions of microscopic organisms that have rained down over millions of years. This layer is thousands of feet thick, a soft, dusty graveyard that holds the entire history of the ocean's life. The atmosphere at this depth is one of immense stasis. The pressure is now 400 times greater than at the surface. It is no longer a weight, it is the very fabric of the environment. Every molecule of water is packed so tightly that movement feels like pushing through cold velvet. The temperature is a constant, bone-chilling 2 degrees Celsius. Nothing changes here. There are no seasons, no storms, and no light. It is the archive of the eternal. The silence at 4,000 meters is absolute. The echoes from the 3,000-meter mark have finally faded away. You are now too deep for the songs of whales or the vibrations of ships. The only sound is the internal silence of the deep, a hollow, expansive quiet that feels as though it could stretch on forever. If you were to drop a stone here, it would settle into the ooze with a muffled thud that would be the loudest event in a century. Life on the plain is sparse and ghostly. You might see a sea pig, a type of deep-sea cucumber that walks across the mud on tube feet, scavenging for the last organic scraps of marine snow. Or perhaps a Dumbo octopus, flapping its ear-like fins as it hovers just inches above the silt. These creatures are the masters of the low-energy economy. They don't hunt, they sift. They don't race, they linger. Floating over the abyssal plain, you feel a sense of profound insignificance. You are looking at a landscape that has remained virtually unchanged for millions of years. While continents shifted and civilizations rose and fell far above, this gray desert remained exactly as it is now. It is a place of ultimate peace, the final destination for everything that falls. Your mind begins to match the landscape. Your thoughts become flat, wide, and still. The urgency of the surface world, the need to do or to be, simply evaporates under the weight of the water. You are a silent witness to the foundation of the planet. The gray ooze stretches to the horizon in every direction. The water is perfectly clear, yet perfectly dark. We are moving now toward the specialized residence of this desert floor. The desert of the deep is under your feet. The journey moves toward the fish that stand on stilts. Moving now toward the 4,500-meter mark. Depth of 4,500 meters, the tripod fish. The depth is 4,500 meters. You are drifting just a few feet above the silken floor of the abyssal plain. In this world of total darkness and crushing weight, you encounter one of the most iconic silhouettes of the deep, the tripod fish. At 4,500 meters, movement is expensive. To swim against a current, even a current as slow as a creeping shadow, requires energy that is hard to find. The tripod fish has solved this problem with a masterpiece of biological engineering. It has evolved 3 incredibly long, stiff rays that extend from its pelvic fins and its tail. These rays act like stilts, allowing the fish to stand firmly on the soft, muddy seafloor. The atmosphere here is one of infinite patience. The tripod fish does not hunt. It does not search. It stands perfectly still, facing into the slow-moving abyssal current like a statue in a dark gallery. Its long, feather-like pectoral fins are held out in front of its face like sensitive antennae. It is waiting. It is waiting for the tiny vibrations of a single crustacean or a fragment of marine snow to drift into its touch. When the moment comes, it uses its fins like a net to sweep the food into its mouth. The pressure at 4,500 meters is now a staggering 450 times that of the surface. You can feel the stillness of the water as a solid density. In this environment, the tripod fish's strategy is brilliant. By standing on stilts, it remains elevated above the boundary layer of the silt, where the water flows just a little bit faster and carries just a little bit more food. It is the architect of the standing weight. The silence at this depth is deep and textured. Because you are so close to the floor, you can feel the faint swish of the current as it moves around the fish's stilts. It is a soft, rhythmic sound, like the breathing of the earth. There is no light here, only the image your mind constructs from the tactile reality of the deep. The tripod fish is a creature of touch and vibration, living in a world where sight is a forgotten concept. Floating beside this silent sentry, you find yourself holding your breath. The tripod fish might stand in this exact spot for hours, or even days, without moving a single muscle. It is a lesson in minimalism. In the archive of the deep, success is not measured by speed, but by the ability to remain still. You are learning to exist in the long now, where a single meal is a major event and a century is just a change in the silt. Your thoughts have become as still as the fish itself. You are no longer a traveler passing through. You are becoming part of the landscape of the plain. The weight of the miles above has pressed all the noise out of your mind, leaving only the steady, quiet pulse of the abyss. The tripod fish remains anchored in the dark, a living sculpture on the grey mud. We are moving away from the silt and toward a strange, toxic wonder hidden in the depressions of the seafloor. The stilts are fading into the gloom. The journey moves toward the lakes beneath the ocean, moving now toward the 5,000-meter mark. Depth of 5,000 meters, the brine pools. The depth is 5,000 meters. You have reached a point where the ocean seems to defy its own nature. As you glide over the abyssal floor, you see what looks like a shoreline, a shimmering, distinct surface beneath the water. You have found a brine pool, an underwater lake of toxic salt where time seems to stop. At 5,000 meters, these pools are formed when ancient salt deposits beneath the seafloor dissolve, creating water so dense and saturated that it does not mix with the surrounding ocean. It sits in depressions on the floor like a heavy, translucent liquid, complete with its own waves and beaches. It is a sea within a sea, an archive of concentrated minerals that has remained trapped here for millennia. The atmosphere at the 5,000-meter mark is one of eerie, lethal beauty. The brine is 5 times saltier than the seawater you are floating in. It is devoid of oxygen and highly toxic to most life. If a fish or a crab from the plain accidentally swims into the pool, it is instantly pickled, preserved in a state of perpetual death. You see the ghostly, white remains of creatures lying at the bottom of the pool, perfectly intact, looking as though they fell only moments ago when, in reality, they may have been there for decades. The pressure is now 500 times greater than at the surface. You can feel the distinct boundary between the normal water and the brine. It feels like a wall of thick, oily syrup. The silence here is even more profound because there is no movement within the pool itself. The brine is too heavy to flow. It is a stagnant, silent witness to the history of the Earth's crust. The only life here exists at the very edge. Around the shoreline of the pool, you might see dense clusters of mussels and tube worms. They do not eat the brine. They host specialized bacteria that turn the methane seeping from the pool's edges into energy. It is a dark, chemical garden, a chemosynthetic oasis in a desert of salt. These creatures don't need the sun. They live off the literal breath of the earth. Floating over the shimmering surface of the pool, you feel a sense of profound stillness. You are looking at a place where the rules of decay have been suspended. The brine pool is a time capsule. It reminds you that the archive doesn't just record life, it preserves it in the most extreme ways imaginable. Your mind feels as dense and focused as the brine itself. The distractions of the upper world are miles and miles above. Here, there is only the chemical glow of survival and the cold, salt-laden silence of the 5,000-meter mark. The shimmering lake is falling behind us. The water is beginning to grow warmer, not from the sun, but from the heat of the planet's core. The toxic shoreline is fading. The journey moves toward the smoke and the fire of the deep, moving now toward the 5,500-meter mark. Depth of 5,500 meters, the hydrothermal vent. The depth is 5,500 meters. The darkness here is suddenly interrupted by a violent, towering energy. You have arrived at a hydrothermal vent, a place where the ocean floor is literally torn open, revealing the volcanic fire of the Earth's interior. This is the heartbeat of the deep. At 5,500 meters, you see black smokers, chimneys made of minerals that rise like jagged skyscrapers from the seafloor. They are spewing clouds of what looks like thick, black smoke, but it is actually superheated water, reaching temperatures of over 350 degrees Celsius. On the surface, this water would be steam, but here, under the crushing pressure of the abyss, it remains a liquid, a searing, mineral-rich soup that surges into the freezing ocean. The atmosphere at this depth is one of primal intensity. For miles, the ocean has been a desert of cold and silence. Here, it is a crowded, boiling city. The vents create their own weather and their own rules for life. You are surrounded by giant tube worms with blood-red plumes, white yeti crabs crawling over one another, and clouds of specialized shrimp. They live in a narrow Goldilocks zone, just inches away from the scalding vent fluid, but far enough to avoid being cooked alive. The pressure is now 550 times greater than at the surface. You can feel the turbulence of the water, a chaotic, vibrating energy that stands in stark contrast to the stillness of the abyssal plain. The sound here is a low-frequency roar, a constant, muffled churning as the earth exhales its mineral breath into the sea. It is a powerful, grounding noise that reminds you that the planet is alive, a molten engine wrapped in a cold, blue skin. This is the only place on Earth where life is completely independent of the sun. The creatures here don't wait for marine snow to fall from above. They thrive on chemosynthesis, turning the toxic chemicals from the vents into the energy of life. In the archive of the deep, these vents represent the beginning. Many scientists believe this is where life on our planet first sparked into existence, in the dark, hot, pressurized cradle of the seafloor. Floating near the shimmering heat of the smoker, you feel a sense of awe. You are witnessing the raw power of creation. The vent is a bridge between the molten core of the planet and the cold volume of the sea. It is a reminder that even in the most inhospitable corners of the universe, energy and life will find a way to meet. Your thoughts are no longer slow and drifting. They are sharpened by the heat and the roar of the water. You feel the vitality of the earth pulsing through the soles of your feet. You are witnessing the fountain of life in the heart of the midnight. The black smoke is swirling into the dark behind us. The water is returning to its steady, freezing chill as we leave the heat behind and head toward the Great Divide. The fire of the deep is fading. The journey moves toward the gateway of the underworld, moving now toward the 6,000-meter mark. Depth of 6,000 meters, the Hadal Trenches. The depth is 6,000 meters. You have left the flat plains behind and entered the Hadal Zone, named after the underworld. This is a place of narrow canyons and deep, jagged scars in the Earth's crust. You are now nearly 4 miles below the surface. At 6,000 meters, the geography changes from flat mud to steep, rocky walls. These are the trenches, the deepest valleys on the planet. The water here is held in a tight, narrow grip. The pressure is now 600 times greater than at the surface membrane. It is a weight so immense that it changes the very chemistry of life. The shells of most creatures would simply dissolve at this depth, so the life here has adapted to be soft, flexible, and resilient. The atmosphere in the trench is one of extreme isolation. You are no longer in the open sea. You are in a corridor of stone and water. The temperature is just a fraction above freezing. The water is incredibly clear, but it is a clarity that serves no purpose, as there is not a single photon of sunlight to reveal it. The darkness here is heavy and absolute. It feels like a physical substance that fills your lungs and slows your heart to a steady, ancient rhythm. Life here is rare, but it is resilient. You might see the Hadal snailfish, a pale, translucent creature that looks almost like a ghost. Its skin is so thin you can see its internal organs. It moves with a slow, serpentine wiggle, gliding over the trench walls. These fish live at the very limit of what vertebrate life can endure. They do not fight the pressure, they exist in balance with it. They are the ultimate survivors, thriving in a place where most of the planet would be crushed in an instant. The sound at 6,000 meters is the sound of the moving Earth. This is where the giant plates of the world's crust meet and grind against one another. You can feel the low-frequency vibrations of the planet shifting, a deep, tectonic groan that echoes through the narrow canyon walls. It is a powerful, grounding sound. It reminds you that you are standing at the very edge of the Earth's interior. The silence between these groans is even deeper than on the plain. It is a hollow, cavernous silence. There is no weather here. There is no marine snow. The food that reaches this depth is rare, perhaps a large carcass that has fallen from miles above, providing a feast for the scavengers of the dark. In the archive of the trench, life is a patient wait for the next gift from the surface world. Floating between the rocky walls, you feel a sense of total surrender. You have traveled as far as almost any living thing can go. The world of the sun, the wind, and the seasons is a different universe entirely. Down here, there is only the rock, the cold, and the immense weight of the miles. Your mind has become as still as the water in the trench. There is no noise left in your thoughts, only the steady, quiet observation of the deep. You are a guest in the most private room of the ocean. The trench is a place of sanctuary, protected by miles of water and a wall of pressure. It is a place where time has stopped. The rocky walls are fading into the darkness below. We are approaching the final floor, the deepest point ever recorded. The world of the open sea is far above. The journey now moves toward the 7,000-meter mark. Depth of 7,000 meters, the Snailfish Archive. The depth is 7,000 meters. You have crossed the threshold into the Hadal Zone, the realm named for the god of the underworld. The flat plains are gone, replaced by the steep, plunging walls of a trench. In this narrow, high-pressure corridor, you find the deepest dwelling vertebrate known to science, the Hadal snailfish. At 7,000 meters, you are witnessing a masterpiece of biological resilience. The snailfish doesn't look like a warrior of the deep. It looks like a ghost. It is pinkish-white, translucent, and lacks scales. Its skin is so thin and delicate that you can see the faint outline of its internal organs through its body. It moves with a slow, serpentine wiggle, its large, tadpole-like head scanning the trench walls for tiny amphipods. The atmosphere at this depth is defined by impossible physics. The pressure is now 700 times greater than at the surface, roughly the equivalent of an elephant standing on your thumb. At this depth, the very proteins in a normal animal's body would stop functioning. Their cell membranes would turn to a solid, waxy sludge. But the snailfish is different. It carries a special molecule called TMAO that acts as a chemical anchor, holding its proteins in shape against the crushing weight of the water. The silence at 7,000 meters is sharp and crystalline. You are far below the hydrothermal vents and the active plains. The water here is incredibly clear, but there is nothing to see except what your own light reveals. The snailfish doesn't seem to mind the dark. It has no need for armor or camouflage because few predators can survive at this depth. It is the king of a deserted kingdom, a fragile, soft-bodied ruler of a world made of stone and pressure. Floating beside this translucent creature, you realize that strength is not always about hardness. The snailfish survives because it is soft. It doesn't resist the pressure, it incorporates it. Its bones are made of flexible cartilage rather than brittle calcium. It is perfectly adapted to the most extreme room in the archive. Your thoughts have become as clear and fragile as the snailfish itself. There is a strange vulnerability in being this deep. You are thousands of feet below the bottom of most of the world's oceans. You are in a secret place, a deep storage locker where the Earth keeps its most specialized designs. The snailfish gives a final, slow flick of its tail and vanishes into a crevice in the trench wall. The descent continues into the true abyss, where even the hardiest fish will eventually reach their limit. The ghost of the trench is gone. The journey moves toward the point where physics begins to break the rules of life. Moving now toward the 8,500-meter mark. Depth of 8,500 meters, the pressure hull. The depth is 8,500 meters. You are descending through the narrow, jagged throat of the trench. At this coordinate, you reach an invisible, terrifying boundary known as the pressure hull. It is not a physical wall, but a biological one, the point where the laws of physics begin to override the chemistry of life. At 8,500 meters, the pressure is a staggering 850 times that of the surface. For the last several miles, life has survived by being soft and flexible. But here, the weight of the ocean becomes so great that it begins to interfere with the movement of molecules themselves. This is the depth limit for most complex life. Below this point, the very enzymes that allow a heart to beat or a gill to process oxygen are squeezed so tightly that they can no longer change shape to do their jobs. The atmosphere at this depth is one of extreme tension. You are in the dead zone for fish. The snailfish we saw at 7,000 meters cannot descend much further than this. Their bodies simply cannot produce enough chemical stabilizers to keep their cellular machinery from grinding to a halt. The water feels like a solid, unyielding vice. It is a place where the ocean says no to the designs of the upper world. The silence at 8,500 meters is heavy and metallic. There is no biological noise, no clicks, no snaps, no pulses. You are surrounded by the sheer, vertical walls of the trench, made of rock that has been compressed for millions of years. The only movement comes from the occasional shiver of the trench walls as they adjust to the weight of the world above. It is a soundless, crushing vibration that travels through your very bones. Life here is shifting from the complex to the indestructible. You might see tiny, translucent amphipods, crustaceans the size of a thumb, that have evolved specialized pressure-resistant shells and proteins. They are the only ones who can cross this threshold. They look like fragile glass, yet they are tougher than the titanium hulls of the most advanced submarines. They move with a frantic, jerky energy, the only sparks of life in a world that is trying to turn them into stone. Floating at the 8,500-meter mark, you feel a sense of profound fragility. This is the point where you realize that life is a delicate miracle of chemistry. In the world above, we take for granted the space between our atoms. Here, that space is a luxury. You are witnessing the moment where biology meets its master, the raw, crushing power of the Earth's gravity acting through the medium of water. Your thoughts are focused and tight. There is no room for wandering imagination here. The pressure demands your full attention. You are a witness to the hull, the point where the archive transitions from a world of creatures to a world of pure physics. The last of the fish have turned back. Only the small, the simple, and the silent continue into the deep. The biological wall is behind us. The journey moves into the true abyss of the trenches, moving now toward the 10,000-meter mark. Depth of 10,000 meters, the Challenger Deep. The depth is 10,000 meters. You have reached the final descent. You are hovering in the narrowest point of the Mariana Trench, a vertical mile deeper than the summit of Mount Everest is high. This is the Challenger Deep, the absolute bottom of the world's archive. At 10,000 meters, the water is no longer just a liquid. It is a physical weight that defies imagination. The pressure is now a staggering 1,000 times greater than at the surface. Every square inch of space is under the weight of a vertical column of water 6 miles high. In this environment, the very atoms of the water are squeezed closer together. It is a place where physics dictates that most life simply cannot exist. The atmosphere at this depth is a sanctuary of total stillness. There are no currents here. The water is ancient, cold, and motionless. You are standing in the most stable environment on the planet. While the surface world experiences seasons, storms, and the frantic passage of time, the Challenger Deep remains unchanged for millennia. It is the ultimate deep storage of the Earth. The silence is absolute. It is a hollow, pressurized quiet that feels like it has a texture, a heavy, velvety void that swallows every thought. You are so far removed from the world of breath and light that the surface feels like a dream from a different life. There is no up anymore, only the crushing reality of the here. Life at 10,000 meters is reduced to its most resilient forms. You won't see the snailfish here. They reached their biological limit over 1,000 meters ago. Instead, you see giant amphipods, translucent scavengers that look like pale, oversized shrimp. They thrive on the final, microscopic scraps of organic matter that have spent months drifting down to this terminal point. They are joined by xenophyrophores, massive single-celled organisms that look like dark, folded sponges. They are the silent, microscopic guardians of the bottom. Floating at the 10,000-meter mark, you feel a sense of profound isolation and peace. You have reached a place where the human ego cannot survive. The weight of the ocean has pressed away everything unnecessary, the noise, the hurry, the light. You are a witness to the Earth's most private secret, that at the very bottom of everything, there is a perfect, unyielding calm. Your mind has become as still as the water. There is no more data to collect, no more layers to pass. You are resting on the threshold of the final log. The walls of the trench are closing in. The floor is finally within reach. The descent is nearly complete. The world of the sun is a galaxy away. Moving now toward the final coordinate, 10,935 meters. Depth of 10,935 meters, the final log. The depth is 10,935 meters. You have reached the terminal point of the journey. You are standing in the Challenger Deep, at the very bottom of the Mariana Trench. If you were to place the tallest mountain on Earth here, its peak would still be covered by over 2 kilometers of water. You are at the absolute limit of the world. At 10,935 meters, the pressure is nearly 1,100 times greater than at the surface. It is equivalent to having an elephant stand on every square inch of your body. The water here is so compressed that it is technically denser than the water at the surface. It feels like a solid, unyielding weight. In this extreme environment, the silence is no longer just a lack of sound. It is a heavy, physical presence that seems to push against your very thoughts. The landscape at the bottom of the world is a pale, yellowish desert of diatomaceous ooze. This is a fine, powdery silk made from the remains of microscopic creatures that have fallen from the sunlit layers for millions of years. It is incredibly soft, like a layer of fresh, undisturbed dust in a room that has been closed for eternity. There are no currents here. The water is as still as the stone of the trench walls. Life at 10,935 meters is microscopic and resilient. You are surrounded by extremophiles, single-celled organisms, and tiny, translucent amphipods that look like white shrimp. They live in a world where the chemistry of life is different. They don't use the sun's energy. They survive on the chemical fragments and organic debris that finally settle here at the end of their long, vertical journey. They are the final janitors of the planet, turning the last remains of the surface into the foundation of the deep. The sound at the bottom is the ultimate silence. You are nearly 7 miles beneath the waves. The vibrations of the human world, the ships, the cities, the machines, cannot reach this coordinate. The only sound is the occasional, distant crack of the Earth's crust shifting under the immense weight of the ocean. It is the sound of the planet adjusting its posture. It is a lonely, ancient noise that emphasizes how far you have traveled. The temperature is constant, hovering just above freezing. There is no light here, not even the bioluminescence of the midwater. Any light you see would be your own. In the total obsidian of the Challenger Deep, you realize that you are in a place where time does not exist. 1,000 years here is the same as a single second. The environment never changes. It is the most stable, quiet, and protected place on the planet. Floating just inches above the silken floor, you feel a sense of absolute completion. There is nowhere left to go. You have documented every layer, every shift in light, and every increase in pressure. The archive is full. Your mind is perfectly clear, emptied of all the noise and clutter of the world above. You are in a state of total, heavy rest, supported by the entire mass of the ocean. You are at the 0 point of the Earth's crust. The journey that began at the surface membrane has found its final, silent home. The dust of the seafloor is still. The water is heavy and cold. The descent is over.